On today's show, why has Dereck Lively been so good for the Dallas Mavericks to start this season? Are the Mavericks relying too much on him? And how did Rafael know? We'll talk about that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, making Locked On Mavs your first listen today. But the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day and comment anything below. Let me know in the comment section, what's one thing you want to see from Dereck Lively in the next 10 games? Could be less fouling, could be more rebounding, could be anything. Let me know. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $100, $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And joining me, the draft guru himself, Chad Ford's appointed draft expert from Locked On NBA Big Board and the NBA Big Board newsletter. What you got for me, Rafael Barlowe?
I'm stuffed, man. I ate too much over Thanksgiving break.
How many plates? How many plates you get to?
I don't know. It was kind of embarrassing. I finished 2 before everybody at the table finished 1.
Lapping the field, Rafael Barlowe.
So I'm trying to chill out this week because I gained like 4 pounds. Not saying I'm like weight watching, but you know.
Well, that's the Bears going to hibernation for, right? Like you gain some, you have to lift, pack it in, and then now you can take it a nap for a while.
Yeah, I need to do something active this week.
Oh, we're going to talk about Dereck Lively today because it was back in February or March of this year. I think I had you on the show, and we talked about just some prospects. I was like, pitch me some prospects the Mavericks could be looking at because it didn't look very good for the Mavericks at the time. It didn't look as bad as it ended up being, but it did not look very good. And so I was like, all right, they may have this pick. So pitch me some prospects. And you started going through some of them. And then you pitched me some guy named Dereck Lively II. And I hadn't watched much college basketball. I still hadn't watched much college basketball. And I was like, okay, you're talking me into this guy. So we'll talk about why Rafael was right about him, what he saw in college. We'll talk about that a little later. And we want to talk about the future too. We'll focus on what he has to do to take his game to the next level, young bigs and fouling and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about that. But I want to start here. Why has Dereck Lively been so effective for Dallas early on? Because right now, when Dereck Lively's on the court, the Mavericks offensive rating is 121 points per 100 possessions. Incredible. Like 88th percentile. Great. On defense, they're 114. They allow 114 points per 100 possessions. That's 51st percentile, right in the middle, average. And average for the Mavericks is amazing. We'll take average on defense. That is great. And then when he leaves the floor, there's so much work. They're honestly, so their net rating is +7 when he's on the court. When he's off the court, it's -3.5.
Yep.
Why does the Dallas Mavericks just offense and defense fall off a cliff when he's off the court?
Well, one, I mean, if you just look at last year, I think Powell was like averaging like 4 rebounds per game. So they were the worst rebounding team in the league, if I'm not mistaken. If they weren't the worst, they were like the second worst rebounding team in the league.
It was probably 3 rebounds. That's probably what you were wrong about.
Yeah. So one, he provides rebounding, and then just the vertical lob threat alone, I think that the gravity of him rolling to the rim, and even though like it's not necessarily the first option for the team's defense to stop him, but just the fact that you have to respect him as a lob threat, and I think it's opening up corner threes for Grant Williams and even like Derrick Jones. So I think that's why he's helping out on the offensive end, and defensively, you just have size and you have a guy that is a threat to block shots. And even though he's fouling and he's still young, I just think that, I mean, you just have size and length in the middle, which is something that the Mavericks needed.
They absolutely do. I mean, we have been waiting for a center like this for so long. Just an actual lob threat that, not that Luka can make look good, but that actually is good, right? And there is some of both. Luka is making him look good in this. There's some stats that I look at and go, oh, Luka is really making the most out of Dereck Lively's rookie season right now. But also you look and say, well, Luka can make a lot of guys look good, but Dereck Lively is bringing his own stuff to the table as well. I think the extra passing out of that.
Yeah.
Is something that we haven't seen a lot that we'll probably get into a little bit more. But yeah, just his gravity, and even just having a bigger guy dive in the paint and like roll to the rim, I feel like adds an extra level of, oh, we've got to go, like, I've got to go dig, or I've got to go like help on that guy. And then, like you said, creates open threes. And we're just not seeing as much of that when Lively is off the court. The defense dropping off that far, though, is wild. To go from average to like bottom of the barrel, like bottom 3 defense, basically, when he's off the court. What is he bringing on defense for you?
Size and length, and just someone that is a threat to block a shot. I mean, he's vertical. He can get up and alter shots, which is something that the Mavs haven't had in a while. They thought they were getting with DeAndre Jordan, and he was stealing rebounds.
Oh, which time? Which time did they think?
The time when Cuban yelled at him. That was a first, and I haven't seen it since.
But he's driving around Houston.
Yeah, I think didn't he almost hurt Luka one play when he was trying to get steal a rebound that was out of his area? But anyway, he's just giving the Mavs what they've lacked. That's just an interior presence on both ends of the floor.
That was the first viral video I think I've ever made. I think I made a video of are the Mavericks freezing out Luka Doncic on my former channel, and it got like 400,000 views. And I was like, oh, there's people have some feelings about this.
Yeah, that's 400,000. That's a lot, man.
People love Luka, man. I found that, and here I am, like 6 years later, so, basically. But yeah, that was all the way back to DeAndre Jordan back then. But yeah, having somebody like that, having just, the size to stand in front of him. I went back and watched a bunch of his defensive plays, and like, he gets scored on, but everybody gets scored on in the NBA, especially bigs. You defend so many possessions, it's just going to happen. Offense, especially this season, is way up. Like every team's offensive rating is up. Like the worst team in the league, maybe not the worst team because they're the Pistons, but the worst team in like the Bulls, like 110 offensive rating. That would have been like top 5, like 5 or 6 years ago. It's wild how efficient teams are right now in, just in scoring the basketball, and like be efficient. Like all the analytics have led up to this. And so if you look on the defensive side, he is bringing a lot of that stuff, but just having somebody that's long that can stand there and drop reliably. Like it feels like when Dwight Powell does a drop. So a player comes up and, sets a screen, and then that player is usually being defended by the center, and the center will just like drop back into the paint instead of stepping up to the level of the screen. So when they drop back, it feels like players, ball handlers will just look at Dwight Powell and say, well, I'm just going to do anything I want. I'm going to shoot over the top of you. I'm going to hit a floater over the top of you. When Lively's there, at least they got to think about it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a play on his last name, but he's a live body, and you have to respect a guy that is active and has a great motor. Not saying that Dwight doesn't, but I just think there's so many years of film on Dwight. His strengths, and teams know exactly how to attack him on the defensive end.
They do, and he just doesn't bring a lot of length in that area, and so that's something that they've really struggled with. One thing I think you talked about his rebounding and his length earlier. In the first 14 games of a rookie center, like in their career, since 2005, Dereck Lively has the most offensive rebounds. Like the most offensive rebounds by any rookie center since 2005 in their first 14 games. He's getting offensive boards, and that's something the Mavericks just haven't had at all. That creates extra possessions. That creates an easier time for the defense because you're not having to play as many defensive possessions and all that. Do the Mavericks rely too much on Dereck Lively, though? That's kind of my next question as we go into that.
Well, before that, I wanted to ask you, do you think that is part of strategy? Because, for the last few years, teams have abandoned crashing the glass, and they're just focusing on getting back. And I forgot who it was, but I spoke to someone prior to the season, and they believe that teams are going to start trying to crash the offensive glass now, especially if everybody's trying to get back on defense or whatever. So they thought we may see a shift going back towards that. So I think it's a combination of both, in my opinion. Do you think that the Mavs are actively trying to crash the glass, or you think it's like their strategy?
No, I don't think they are. I wish they would sometimes, but I don't think I think it just, he's always going to be the farthest back on any defensive play because he's defending the rim. He's the last line of defense. And so with him there, I think just having a big guy like that, where you'll watch Dwight, he does like the exact opposite. He'll like anti-crash the glass. He'll like get back on transition defense like as fast as possible. As soon as the shot goes up almost, he's like getting back.
Yeah.
Whereas Lively will wait for a second for better or for worse. And he's gotten a bunch of offensive rebounds out of it, which has been good. So just having somebody that can get there, like can get to the ball, I think has been the big difference there with him.
And the tap outs and just like I said, it's his last name is Lively, and at the very minimum, he's bringing the Mavs a live body with size and length, and so I think that plays a big role in the extra possessions. But I'm very pleased with how he's played so far this season.
Coming up, do the Mavericks rely too much on Dereck Lively? I want to get into that, and then we'll allow Rafael to have his victory lap here on Dereck Lively and talk about what he saw from that. And so we'll talk about all that and more coming up. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook has all kinds of odds and lines and props for you to check out through the NFL season, the NBA season now, Rookie of the Year right now. If you are, feeling real good about Dereck Lively and you're like, this is the baseline. He's gonna take off after this. He's gonna win Rookie of the Year. Somehow he's getting over Chet. He's getting over Victor Wembanyama. You think those guys will get injured in some way? Probably. That's the only rational reason. But if you want to, Dereck Lively to win Rookie of the Year is plus 42,000 right now. You put down $100 on Dereck Lively to win Rookie of the Year and he wins, you can win $42,000. I mean, even $10, that's 4,000. I don't know. If you want to put that down, go check that out. If you want to do some other stuff too, put some money on a money line for a game or something like that, an NFL game, an NBA game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. Go check it out at FanDuel.com/lockedon. As the NFL season rages on, FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. If you want to support the show, text me, get text alerts from me on all kinds of stuff, like Mavs rumors. I sent a report from practice today, all that kind of stuff. Check it out in our subtext. Click the link in the description. Text the number as well. All right, Rafael, let's get into this next part here. Do the Mavericks rely too much on Dereck Lively? Because they don't look very good when he doesn't play. Is it too much on a rookie center for them to be like, all right, we just need this guy. We're going to keep asking more and more and more of him.
I don't think so. I mean, he's only playing 24 minutes per game. I would like to see him get up to about 28, 29 as the season goes on. I mean, a lot of that is going to depend on foul trouble, but I think that he has a simple role in a sense. Like he's not really asked to do a lot on the offensive end, but be a threat and be a lob threat and catch passes and set screens. So I think that I should say, I don't think that they are relying too much on him. And I would actually like to see more. I mean, like we have a guy that's averaging 8 points, a little under 8 rebounds per game, shooting 69% from the floor. He's averaging 24 minutes. And so I think that he can do more with more minutes.
Yeah, this question is like, are they relying too much on him? It's kind of twofold. It's like, are the Mavericks relying too much on him, or are the Mavericks relying on him too much, right? It depends on whatever emphasis you put it on, like what subject in this question you ask. Like, are they relying too much on Dereck Lively? I don't think that Lively is being asked to do too much, right? Like, I completely agree with you on that. Like, his role is very simple. Like you said, and everything that they ask him to do, he does, and he does very well. And that's the reason why he's in the NBA and was a first-round pick and top, lottery pick and all that. And so I think that they're not asking him to do too much. And I agree with you that I hope that they ask more and more of him and like continue. The problem is they are relying on him too much because when he doesn't play, they fall off a cliff and like they can't replace him. And so that's a Mavericks roster scheme, construction, everything question as to, well, when this rookie is not on the court, why do we fall off a cliff basically? And why is it just not working for us? That I think is a problem.
Yeah, you just go back to last year's team when he's off the
kind
floor.
Of, yeah. Sense. Without Christian Wood. That's the difference between the two.
Yeah, man. Speaking of a guy that thought that he was going to get paid and now he's struggling. I mean, I'm sure as much as they didn't like Dallas last year, I bet he wishes he were back here.
I don't know. He's been living in LA probably.
Yeah, but
the team he loved growing up.
He's a numbers guy. He wants his numbers, and he's not getting them in LA.
No, we swore off Christian Wood talk on this podcast after the Lakers game. We're like, we're done. It's over. We're putting it in the back burner.
There's another game coming up soon, though, right?
Oh my god. Okay, we'll do it again for that game. We'll talk about how he plays, and that's it. There's no more of this. There's still probably people that are in the comments and on Twitter like, should have played Christian Wood more. He was the answer. He was the answer last year.
I'm sure. Christian and JaVale lineups together.
Let's talk about his college career. Dereck Lively, not Christian Wood. Let's talk about Dereck Lively's college career. So you came on here and you were a big proponent of him early. You had him top 10 pretty much the whole season, right?
No. I had him in the beginning, and then he got off to like a really slow start. And then it wasn't until he started to play a little bit more. He was sidelined by a calf injury. And then I really had to just focus on what he's doing on the defensive end as opposed to what he did on offense, because he was an absolute non-factor on offense to the point where he was screening and wasn't even rolling. Like there were plays where he would set a screen and he would just get back on defense because he knew that he wasn't getting touches. And so once I just kind of focused on defense and just saw that, all right, if you have a guy that's playing hard on the defensive end and he knows he's not getting touches, but he does have, he's not a negative on offense as far as skill set. I'm like, imagine how much or how more effective he would be if he knew that there was someone that was going to find him, as a lob threat or as a roll man. And so that's why I just thought the Mavs were the perfect pick or the perfect fit for him.
And you nailed that. What's the difference about his role at Duke compared to his role in the NBA now?
Luka Doncic. I mean,
there you go. That's pretty much it.
It's the spacing of the NBA is a lot better. I think his game is more suited for the NBA than college. I mean, there's no spacing in college. They played him next to Kyle Filipowski, who was supposed to be a floor spacer, but he shot below 30% from three. The lane is more packed. And so I just don't think that if you are like a vertical lob threat or a rim roller, college basketball is going to maximize your strength. And I think Lively has way more to his offensive game than he's been able to show, even in Dallas. I mean, he's a much better shooter. And I try to watch guys' high school film because, and I've mentioned this before, but I had a conversation with Bam Adebayo once, and he told me, always look at a guy's high school film because high school film will show you what they actually can do that they may not be able to showcase in college, because if you go to like some of the bigger blue blood schools, you're sacrificing. And so the conversation started was I mentioned how did, like Zach Collins get drafted ahead of Bam because, and he mentioned that at Kentucky, he was used basically as a screener, a rim roller, kind of like a finisher. But he said, if you watch his high school tape, you could see that he could pass and he could handle the ball and so on. So that's kind of been an emphasis for me when I watch guys. And so when I watched Lively in high school, I saw that he was someone that could shoot, could face up. And actually my concern about him was I thought that he was such a promising shooter that he was likely to fall in love with the shot and actually abandon being like a roll man or a threat around the rim. And so far he's proven me wrong on that point. But I
the Mavs are like, you will not do that because you will not shoot, except for twice out of timeouts.
I think he can shoot. And I had mentioned it, and it was funny. I tweeted it while I was at the combine. I was uploading my Locked On NBA Big Board podcast.
That's right.
They had really good Wi-Fi at the arena, so it just made more sense for me to upload at the arena. And once I got back to my hotel, I was done. And so every night around 10 or 11 o'clock, I would hear like a ball bouncing, and I would go because I would be recording in the just the area. What's the name of it? I'm lost for words.
In the hallway?
Yeah, the hallway. I know there's like another name for it, but I record out in the hallway, and then I would like peek through the curtains, and I would see Lively like literally knocking down corner three after corner three. At one point, I counted. It's like, okay, he's made 12 in a row. I tweeted it, and I got accused for being a clutch puppet. People were saying that Clutch paid me. I'm like, no, I'm not getting paid. He's actually shooting. And then he had the combine where the Clutch actually did their own combine, and they show the actual video footage of him knocking down three after three after three. And then I think some people thought, okay, he didn't make that up. But I didn't expect him to get the freedom to shoot this year, but I definitely think down the line he is going to be like this unique floor spacer that can anchor a defense. And those guys are extremely rare and, and really, really valuable in the NBA.
Oh, I mean, look at there's only a few right now. It's like Brook Lopez, Al Horford, probably. You could talk about your like Joel Embiid's or your Jokic or your Karl Anthony Towns. Like you could talk about those type of guys. Like, but those are all-star MVP level.
And how many are like can anchor a defense, stretch the floor, and play as a vertical lob threat? Like, you know, your Lopez and your Horford, they're not lob threats. Jokic is not a lob threat. So I think that if
Jokic is a lob threat, just he's a threat in any facet of the game. Just name one, like in any.
Well, I don't think you have to worry about the Jokic.
He's not getting He's not getting vertical. He's not a vertical lob threat, but he definitely is a lob threat.
Well, he's usually the one throwing the lobs.
That's right.
So I think that if he can knock down shots, you end up having like this really, really unique player that, like I said, is a vertical lob threat, can anchor a defense and space the floor. And imagine how much or how wide open the Mavs offense would be if there's the Luka Lively pick and pop is a threat.
Oh,
so that's what I think can happen in the near future.
Speaking of the future, let's talk about that. How does Dereck Lively get to that spot? How does he get to a spot where he's anchoring a defense and playing more? We'll talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You can go to Prize Picks, and basketball season is here now. NFL season's still going on. If you want to be able to watch some of those NFL games, like the early slate of the NFL games have just been not interesting at all. If you want to have a little more interest in it, you can do the combo platter or the specials league, as Prize Picks calls it. You can pick, for example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. You can combine stats like that. Just pick more or less on the projections for them. For example, Dak Prescott against Seattle on Thursday, 273.5. That's very specific. 273.5 passing yards. I'm going to go more on Dak. He's playing pretty well right now. And then I can combine that with the NBA. Let me go and find. The Pistons. The Pistons Wizards game tonight. The Suck Bowl, basically. I'll go Kyle Kuzma, 23.5. Let me go less on that. You can combine both of those if you want to. Put down $20. I can win 60. If I put down $100 for some reason, I can win 300 on that. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA to get a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA to get a first deposit match up to $100.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
All right, Rafael, let's talk about the future. Dereck Lively. He can shoot the three. You were maybe the one that discovered that he can shoot the three. Did Clutch ever send you like a fruit basket or like a thank you note or like anything like that?
No, but his mom saw me after a game and told me, "Thank you for all the nice things that you said about my son over the last few months." So I was like, okay, she's listening.
She's listening, and also she coaches Lively up, which is hilarious. Like game to game, she'll give him notes and he'll take stuff. And she played college ball, so you're like, okay. And she's taller than me. She's like 6'4".
She's tall.
She's very tall. And she's in it to win it. She's like, move your feet more, and he'll move his feet more the next game.
She's great. I've only talked to her a few times, but it's been great just communicating with her.
How does Lively get to a point where he can start shooting the three more? How does that translate from college to the NBA? How have we seen some of these players go from, all right, they can shoot the three. They maybe don't do it in college that much, but then eventually they can get to it in the NBA.
I think it's going to just depend on Jason Kidd just giving him the confidence to shoot. And I know this because there was a player that I worked with years ago named Dwayne Dedman. Dwayne I think he's played like 13 years, and he used to spend his summers in Dallas, and he could shoot, knock down shots, but he was never allowed to shoot. He told me when he played for the Spurs, they were like, you can't shoot anything outside the paint. And then he told me I think he was traded, or he ended up in Atlanta, and Coach Budenholzer watched him shoot and saw him shoot and said, all right, if you do this again tomorrow, we'll diagram some plays for you within the first 5 games of the year to get you open shots. And so he said the next day he came to practice and he was knocking down shots. And then Bud was like, okay, we're going to put some plays in for you, but you have to shoot a certain percentage in order for us to keep running this play. And it worked out. And for Dwayne, it was like a life-changing year for him financially because he ends up going from like 10-day contracts to like a $44 million contract. And then he goes to Sacramento and they tell him he can't shoot. And then his last stint was in Miami or Philly, and they didn't want him to shoot also. And so it just took one coach to believe in him as a shooter. And I think the same with Lively. I think if Kid is comfortable enough with him shooting, then I think he will. And of course, you still want him to like still be, a lob threat. If I were like to guess, I'd say Kid believes he can shoot, but he doesn't want him to get too comfortable with it early. He still wants him to be, the lob threat, the guy that's a roller, because we've seen plenty of guys. Like my all-time favorite player is Rasheed Wallace. Once Rasheed started making threes, he's literally camped out and only shot threes. And so I think that Kid is from that old NBA in a sense to where you still want your big man to dominate the paint. So I think he's probably wanting him to master his role now, and then he'll give him the freedom to shoot down the line.
That Dwayne Dedmon story is wild because, he literally took 0 threes his first like 5 or 6 years in the NBA, and then took 3.3 threes a game in 2018, which is like that's so wild.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, he could always, that was something he was working on once, he got to the NBA, and it just took one coach to believe in him, and he hasn't had one that believes in his shooting since.
He hasn't. Yeah, it's an interesting point with Lively. It's like it's all about scheme and intention and what you want. Like eventually, I think that he's got to also be able to catch up to the speed of the game. So I wonder if Kid is taking these first, I don't know, 25, 30, 50 games or whatever in his career. All right, catch up to the speed of the game, and then let's introduce the three a little bit here and there. I joked earlier, but they have run 2 plays where Dereck Lively gets a wide open 3 in the corner out of a timeout just to try it and just to see what it is. And they did not go very well. And so maybe he's like, all right, we'll sprinkle a couple of these in and feed the big man just a little bit here and there. And then see what happens there. What other things do you think Lively has to work on to take him to another level?
I would like, and it's not necessarily all on Lively, but I would like the NBA to get to the point to where if you have switches, then you can dump it down to your big and let him take advantage of those switches. I don't see it really happening too much in Dallas because if there is a switch, that means there's a big guarding Luka, and you want that advantage all day because Luka's going to either get fouled, a layup, or kick it out to somebody for a 3. But I would like to see, maybe once a game that they dump it down to him, he gets a post touch and maybe like a jump hook. It was something that he showed a little bit in high school, but he was obviously bigger and more talented than everyone else. I didn't think it would be like his strong suit, but it would be something if he has like a jump hook that he can add to take advantage of mismatches. I think that would be great. But I mean, the passing has been really good, and I was high on him as a passer, but his passing has been a lot better than I thought. And so if he continues to develop there as a passer, I mean, I think Dereck Lively can be an all NBA player. I do. I mean, of course, like some guys are going to have to retire.
Fair.
There's going to be some injuries.
Well, it's positionless now, right? So I mean, maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is a little bit ambitious for me to say that, but I do think at some point, if he can put it all together, like I said, as a floor spacer, a defender, a passer, I think the foundation is definitely there.
You mentioned earlier that you think he can do more offensively. You mentioned a face-up game. What did you see from him in his high school tape that you looked through that showed that he could do some of that kind of stuff?
That he was a good shooter. He played with Jalen Duren. They were on the same team.
Yeah.
So, I mean, imagine you're in high school. You imagine like you're a 5'7" point guard in high school, and you have to go up against that. Only thing you're doing is shooting jumpers. There's no way you're going into the paint. And so with Jalen like being in the middle, Lively was kind of forced to play, not necessarily out on the perimeter, but he was kind of forced to play a different role than he's playing now. And so he was the number 1 player in this class, depending on the publication. And a lot of it was because he was a gifted offensive player.
You're talking face-up game, like drive to the basket, finish, like do anything like that, or are you just talking about just pop like?
Yeah,
pop
I mean,
the
just
shot?
knock down shots and then maybe 1 or 2 dribbles to
Yeah.
get to the rim and make something happen. But I mean, it's something that I don't think I saw once at Duke, and I haven't really seen
No,
this year.
hasn't happened.
But I think that he is a good enough shooter to where he can pop and make, you know, the short corner jumper or jumpers at the elbow. And then I do think that, you know, if there is a closeout, a short closeout, he can attack and get to the rim.
There you go. Go listen to Locked On NBA Big Board. You and your brother James Barlowe, that dynamic duo now, are covering all kinds of scouting, international ball, college ball. If you want to know anything about the next crop of players coming to the NBA, go check out Locked On NBA Big Board, as well as the NBA Big Board newsletter and the website. Go check out that. Subscribe to that as well. I do. It's great. Go check it out. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.